Welcome to Share, a podcast production of the Amethyst Recovery Centers. I'm your host, Kabir Singh. At the top of each episode, we'd like to remind our listeners that addiction is treatable and recovery is possible. If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, call Amethyst today at 855-80-SOBER or visit us online at amethystrecoverycenters.com. 7 years ago, the former sheriff of Lucas County, Ohio, John Tharp, launched a progressive drug and alcohol abuse program. It lets those with substance abuse use disorders seek treatment as opposed to being arrested or receiving jail time. The Drug Abuse Response Team, or D.A.R.T, raises awareness about the dangers associated with heroin and other drug use and works to stop overdose deaths in heavily impacted counties. The D.A.R.T model has been used in many different counties across the nation. We're honored to speak with Lieutenant Steve Rogers and Deputy Sheriff Dennis Whaley to discuss the successful program. Welcome to Share, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Of course. So I was able to cover a little bit about the Lucas County Sheriff that was really the genesis of this program. Is he's still involved today with Sheriff Tharp?
Yes, Sheriff Tharp is still very active with the Drug Abuse Response Team. He did retire January of this year. He is now sitting on the Drug Abuse Response Team's board. We are a recognized 501c3 nonprofit, and so yes, he's involved on a daily basis with D.A.R.T.
Wonderful. So the D.A.R.T program itself, is it a statewide program in Ohio? Is it particular to Lucas County?
So our D.A.R.T unit is specific to Lucas County. It was created July of 2014 under with the assistance of now Governor Mike DeWine, and it was a very innovative concept that Sheriff Tharp wanted to create. He saw firsthand individuals going through withdrawals in our Lucas County Jail. He saw the same individuals coming and going like a never-ending revolving door. That's when the idea blossomed in his mind to, rather than continuously incarcerate these individuals who aren't always necessarily criminals to begin with, it's their addiction that drove them to the criminal behavior. Why don't we try at least to attempt to break this cycle? In turn, he created the D.A.R.T unit, and now we are engaging individuals who are actively engaged battling addiction. And rather than incarceration, we are trying our best to get them linked into treatment services. And it's a very unique unit that we have here in Lucas County. And going back to your question, he was at the time our Attorney General Mike DeWine. He actually opened up funding opportunities for other counties in Ohio to replicate what we're doing here in Lucas County. So there are other similar versions of D.A.R.T across the state of Ohio, and even more so now across the country.
Thank you for that, Lieutenant. It leads me into some thoughts here. I have had in my own experience, the listeners of Share certainly know that I'm a person in recovery myself. For you gentlemen may not know, I just acknowledged 10 years in recovery this past year. So I'm a committed member to the recovery community. And I to that particular point, it can often, the lens at which community members look at pursuits such as this, there's things like recovery homes, all this, although the D.A.R.T program is not that. That's where most of my lived experience has been, is, not in my backyard. Perhaps if we put that lens on the D.A.R.T program, was there any criticism in the early days of, oftentimes some crimes can, the recipients or the victims rather, in this case, may not be really big fans of diversion from incarceration. Did you receive?
I'll let Dennis piggyback off my answer here, because Dennis has been involved with D.A.R.T a lot longer than I have. I was assigned January of 2018, but the one thing that always sticks in my mind, I have numerous conversations with retired Sheriff Tharp, is that he would get phone calls from close, friends of his, other local chiefs of police, and the comment was always said, we didn't put the needle in their arm, so why are we taking it out? And that was one stigma that the sheriff worked so hard to break amongst the law enforcement community, is that we're not always here to arrest, to incarcerate. We need to be more open to other ideas and other potential outcomes. And this is where the D.A.R.T model was created. And I'll let Dennis kind of go into a little more detail on what it was like being an officer in the early days of D.A.R.T and maybe what some of the comments of other law enforcement officers were.
Well, not so much the other law enforcement agencies, but even the people that we went and tried to help. Because the way D.A.R.T started, we would come in the morning and we would get police reports saying, hey, this person overdosed, let's go try to find them. And we know that it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, because we never got good information, the right information, things like that. So it got to the point where when somebody overdosed and were transported by EMS to the hospital, we actually responded right to the hospital to talk to them at that point, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we had a lot of fight with just the people that we were coming to see. Oh, you want me to snitch? Oh, you're here to get me in trouble. And that was a big stigma we really had to overcome. And I think we've done a great job in that. We've serviced or come in contact with well over 6,000 people since our inception. And we got about 78 to 79% at least in the door for an assessment into some type of treatment. Now we know they don't always stay. We know it's troubling at times, but we at least open that door for them. So I think that was a big thing too, the stigma of, why are the police want to help me? What are they going to want out of it? They want me to snitch. They want this, they want that. And we had to really overcome that big stigma too.
That's interesting. And thank you for that, Dennis. That's something I did not occur to me, that the stigma from both the recipients of what you folks are aiming at with sort of diversion, if you will, into treatment. At this point, are officers trained? I guess walk me through what it looks like. Somebody perhaps overdoses. Is that generally where you're seeing the most engagement? Somebody overdoses, you're called in on that?
Yeah, that's when it first started out. It was definitely like that. Somebody would overdose, 911 would be called to the fire, and the police agency that worked that area would show up. They would work on them. They would get them in the ambulance and take them to the hospital, and we would be dispatched through the fire department saying, hey, we got one. And I think we have 7 hospitals. Is that correct, Lieutenant? 7 hospitals we deal with in Lucas County.
Yes. Yeah.
So anytime they were transported, we would show up, we would go in, introduce ourselves, explain who we are, what we do. And the best thing during that time is that when we first started this, we had approximately 10 to 12,000 people addicted in Lucas County to opioids, according to statistics. We only had 16 detox beds. Now we have about 125 detox beds. We had about 100 sober living beds. We have about 450 now. And I do believe that has a lot to do with what D.A.R.T has done and shown what we can do to try to help these people. And it got to the point where we could show up at 2:00 in the morning to the hospital for somebody and take them to detox right then. I mean, it started, very criminal, and it's just gotten so much better. And we like to thank all the treatment centers that we've dealt with and have opened their doors for us.
Of course, that there certainly needs to be buy-in from stakeholders in the community. I know our very own Matt Bell does talk great about you all. It holds you all in very high regard. I've heard the D.A.R.T program mentioned by him. I don't know how many times I've known him for now about 4 years, and we've worked together closely as well. And so, the one question I sort of thinking about here is, I've heard a bunch about heroin and overdoses and the like. Does the D.A.R.T program perhaps look at if somebody gets pulled over for a DUI? I mean, they're less common. The fentanyl in the car, fentanyl, definitely deadly things that are happening right now. But what else is encapsulated in the D.A.R.T program?
So
Should I go ahead with
anybody,
that, Steve?
I was going to say, anybody that wants to call in and ask for assistance with any kind of addiction that they may be going through, we will absolutely 100% do our best to get them linked to treatment. The only difference is that with the opioids is that we actually have a database that was created for us that we utilize, and that's where we're tracking the clients that we're working with, and they're the ones that are battling the opioid addiction. But again, anybody that calls D.A.R.T, it happens. I don't want to say all the time, but it does happen, where somebody that might be dealing with alcoholism or whatever it may be, they will give us a call, and we will work just as hard to get them into treatment as somebody who's battling opioid addiction.
And what happens in the particular cases where somebody denies your services or refuses? What is the next steps like that? They perhaps just walk out of the emergency room. I guess maybe you're giving them Narcan.
Sure.
I know if we can get information most of the time, because we have access to police reports through our system and things like that. And this also goes along with what we deem AMA against medical attention, even when they do overdose and then they refuse to go to the hospital. We receive those people's names and we look up the reports and try to get information. We still try to make contact with them 2 or 3 times within a couple months, just to say, hey, we're still here. Hey, how you doing? You know, we're still here. If you need help, you know, we're here to help you.
And which leads me into my next question: are there D.A.R.T alumni? Is there advocates other, outside the community? I imagine they exist. Well, I mean, Matt's certainly one of them. But do you have engagement like that?
Yeah, I mean, we have people. I mean, I consider some of my first clients, Matt being one. He wasn't my client exactly, but there's a few others that work in the Amethyst family that I consider friends now. You know, they're former clients, but I consider them friends. One of the people that actually works for Amethyst at Midwest, I married him and his wife. I became an ordained minister in Ohio, and he asked me to marry them. So I think we've definitely taken a step further from the client.
That's incredible. You mentioned a piece about the increase in beds, both detox, sober living, and the like. Do you think it's enough?
No, I think we can always fill the beds. I think it's just getting the people to get them into the system. I mean, I think people are just, we get to the point, we have a saying here, don't be afraid to be successful. And I think that's overwhelming sometimes. You know, people are overwhelmed by the bad side of addiction, but sometimes when it gets to be too good, it's overwhelming for them too.
Yeah. Why do we think it is? Or perhaps because you all live there. I recently did a podcast with a doctor at the University of Cincinnati, and he had identified, particular hotspots. So throughout the nation, 25 of them, I think it was the number. And certainly Ohio was there in Lucas County. Have you ever been able to uncover why in particular there's just pronouncements in an area versus others?
I'd say for us is that Toledo is located, we got the turnpike east and west, and we have 75 north and south going right in the heart of Lucas County here. So that's always been one theory on why. It's the ease of drugs making its way into our community. And we got the Great Lakes right on our borders as well. So there's many different options.
And a rail system.
Yeah.
That's for somebody who wants to get in. There's lots of options to bring the drugs in.
It tends to be the recipe for that. Sitting here in Maryland as we record this and being close to Baltimore City, I do know that has a lot of the same makings there. And if anyone knows anything about Baltimore City, it has its whole issues there as well, with shows made about it in the past and the like. I imagine you gentlemen, the D.A.R.T program as a whole is often contacted by other jurisdictions and other counties in other states in the nation as really being pioneers in this. Do you offer that? Are you ever do you ever go out and help people start a program? I know we actually have one here in Montgomery County called STEER program, which stands for Stop, Triage, Engage, Educate, and Rehabilitate. They're very sort of similar. Perhaps you even talk to them. I don't know, but I was curious about that.
Yeah, so we have had numerous agencies come into Lucas County and they have shadowed our unit, sometimes for several days at a time. And what they're doing is they're taking notes. We're providing them literature, different policies, procedures that we have here for D.A.R.T, and then they're returning back to their home communities and incorporating, not maybe to 100% what we're doing here, but they might tweak it here and there, and they are taking the information that they learned from the D.A.R.T unit and incorporating their own version of D.A.R.T. We've had Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Milwaukee PD come in, Indianapolis PD come in. I've received phone calls all the way from Iowa, Boston area. So literally all across the country, including the numerous counties in Ohio alone that have came and shadowed D.A.R.T. So anytime that an agency reaches out to us, we're here to offer as much information as possible. And one of the unique things that I had the honor to represent Sheriff Tharp in Washington, D.C. on 2 separate occasions back in 2019 for a meeting with the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And what they identified D.A.R.T as being as the earliest known first responder diversion program opioid crisis in the entire country. So that was even more eye-opening to hear. And we truly are thankful for the amount of relationships and resources that we've brought here to the Toledo, Ohio area.
Yeah, you guys are certainly trailblazers in this. I can't remember hearing about a program any earlier than when you all started yours. And I certainly heard from Dennis. He shared with us that he became an ordained minister and married one of the clients from one of the recipients, I guess, if you will, from D.A.R.T, which already speaks to how he feels about it. I guess I'll put you on the spot here, Lieutenant Rogers, that how has this changed you? You haven't been in this as long as Dennis, perhaps. And how has it changed your view on, for certainly addicts and throes of addiction and what comes out of that?
Absolutely. So I spent roughly 2.5 years on a road patrol back in, I'm gonna say that was like 2014-ish to 2016. So still fairly in the early days of the opioid addiction affecting Lucas County. And one thing that I realized from my time, even though my time was somewhat short compared to other officers, I still responded to at least a dozen or so overdoses. And I quickly understood that addiction does not discriminate. It doesn't care how old you are, what your society status is, what your religious views may be, or anything like that. I responded to overdoses in low-income housing all the way up to multi-million-dollar houses. So that really had a big impact on me. And also realizing that addiction truly isn't just affecting the addict themselves. It's affecting it's a ripple effect of the entire community. It's affecting their family, their friends, their loved ones. Even so, going into the criminal activity that develops oftentimes from feeding that addiction. So when I was first assigned to D.A.R.T, I had a little bit of an understanding on the addiction world, but it really opened my eyes literally within the first few months of having the privilege to being assigned to this unit. Going to an event and hearing somebody say that I would not be alive if it was not for D.A.R.T. Hearing those comments, those statements, truly, they hit me pretty deep internally. And I cannot credit the officers enough for what they do. And it's not just our unit alone. I want to make sure that everybody knows it is truly the relationships that we have here in Lucas County, because we would not be where we're at today if it wasn't for the countless treatment providers that have spent hours helping D.A.R.T along the way, answering our phone calls day and night, trying to get clients in and out of treatment. So it is a very well-oiled machine, and we're always thankful and honored to work with such a great community here.
And I know, as far as I'm able to speak to it, the feeling's mutual. And I know it is, again, talked about Matt and all the folks out in Ohio, that it's one of our larger footprints, if you will. And we serve a huge amount of people there. So, and we personally thank you for that as well. You spoke about the help that people get out of the D.A.R.T program, answering phone calls, day and night. Knowing what I know here locally about our STEER program, they use peer specialists. It's a little motivated comment here. I'm a peer specialist here in Maryland myself, and so I have a great affinity for peers and their role in this whole thing. You can't answer phone calls 24/7. Are you utilizing folks in recovery or peer special? I mean, who's doing the 24/7?
So pre-COVID, our unit was 24/7. We had non-call. We had officers responding literally every single day of the year. There was an officer on duty.
Wow.
Fortunately, today, due to some COVID and budgetary issues, just like several other agency or county entities across the country, we had to reduce some staffing, and one of the reduction pieces came from temporarily suspending the on-call officer that we had. But that does not mean that officers still aren't receiving phone calls on their own time after hours. Does not mean that their phone calls are going ignored. They are still reaching out to the best of their capability and making sure that we are able to assist any way we can, and that includes weekends as well. Dennis has a great line, and I'll let him. I don't know if he knows what I'm talking about quite yet, but I don't want to take your line from you, Dennis, but we truly don't understand what somebody who is actively engaged in addiction is going through. And there's a fantastic story from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The officers, they brought in some peer support. There was two women who were currently, I think they had maybe 2 years plus of sobriety between, or each of them. And we had a call out from a concerned family member that was trying to get their daughter into treatment. She refused. She wanted nothing to do with treatment. So Dennis goes out there along with one of the officers from Milwaukee, including the two peer support specialists. And Dennis said that they tried to have a conversation with her. She didn't want to hear anything from us. But the two women who have walked in the same shoes that she currently was going through were able to make that connection that we were not able to make. And after 20, 30 minutes of conversing, thankfully she went into treatment. And the peer support is huge. We've utilized peer support on countless occasions from the different treatment providers that we work with. They're always more than happy and obliged as long as their schedules, are available. They're going to be there with us whenever we need to have that extra little nudge to try and help, hopefully convince somebody to at least try treatment.
And if I can piggyback on that, I've always believed that unless you've been an addicted person, you really will never understand that in the mind and things like that. So to talk to somebody that's walked in the same shoes as they have makes all the difference in the world.
It is certainly a part in it. Law enforcement, those of us, but when I say we, folks in recovery, would not be where we are without you all. A lot of times the very, very beginning stages of recovery have law enforcement involved in it. I remember I was on probation for the first couple of years that I was in recovery, and it was the sort of looming background, this backup time and things like that were sitting there that were part of a blend of things that I believe kept me engaged. And the cool part about it is I brought the body and the mind followed, and really I remember very clearly that once I came off probation, it was like August of 2012, I think it was. And I realized a week later, I'm like, wait, I don't got to get my slip signed at the meeting. And it's like, wait, nothing changed. Wait, I didn't drink or use. Like, wait, wow, this is okay. Let me just keep doing what I'm doing. And that's the miracle about the process of recovery, and you gentlemen and the vast amount of resources that you've poured into the community to help people find another way to live is truly remarkable.
And if I can, just to piggyback off the comment you made there, as D.A.R.T officers, we do go to court to support the people. We've given them rights to their probation officers. We will talk on their behalf if they want us to. And I've always told my clients, I said, I'm going to tell them what I know. So if you're not doing the right thing, I'm going to tell them. But if you're doing the right thing, I'm also going to tell them. So that's another part of the D.A.R.T that I think people really like, that they have that support when they, are in that system.
That's certainly a high point here. To have law enforcement showing up for us in a way that we're not always used to. So, gentlemen, I really hope that in the future again we can either grab you two or some other folks from your team and get an update on how D.A.R.T's going and out there in Lucas County and beyond. I really appreciate both of you coming out today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Cool. So there you have it, folks. The folks with D.A.R.T, as well as all of us here at Amethyst, know that addiction treatment beats incarceration. We're glad Lieutenant Rogers and Deputy Sheriff Whaley could join us today to highlight their program. If you or a loved one needs help with addiction, call Amethyst today at 855-80-SOBER or visit us online at amethystrecoverycenters.com. You can find all episodes of Share at amethystrecoverycenters.com/share or download episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us for another episode. I'm Kabir Singh, and we'll see you next time.